Okay, continuing on in this exciting episodes of Theories of Personality, we will be talking about B.F. Skinner. Beerus Frederick B.F. Skinner, born 1904, passed away 1990. Now, this will wind up our section on the second force. Remember our first force. Now we have our second force. We've talked about Pavlov. We've talked about Watson. Now we are going to be talking about Skinner, B.F. Skinner, who played a tremendous role in behaviorism and the acceptance of behaviorism. Ivan Pavlov is known for his classical conditioning. Skinner is associated with operant conditioning. Now, what is the difference between the two? Well, I'm glad you asked. But before we go into this, behaviorism, as well as some previous 15 and 1600s thinkers, postulated that the child was born a blank slate and the environment then worked on this blank slate. And the child did not have any ability on its own, an inherited ability, to go ahead and operate, to go ahead and behave on their environment unless the behavior has been reinforced. In other words, the environment is writing on this blank slate. Now, having said that, these are powerful theories. There's no question about it. They're powerful approaches. I'm not going to take anything away, condemn, criticize the approaches, because I want you to have a grasp of the approaches, and then from that point you can go ahead and make your own decision. Skinner rejected the notion of free will and emphasized the primacy of environmental influence on behavior. Now, I have the text here, and I'm going to read just a little bit in the text. Yes, I know that you can read also, but this is found on page 447. And in this it states here that only what is observable and what can be seen will make a difference. Remembering and anticipating are all observable. Now, he stated that we should be able to observe all events, and we're wondering if we ask ourselves about remembering, about thinking, maybe hatred, love, and so forth, these are also observable, even if they are observed by the person that is experiencing them. Now, in addition, this is the last paragraph, in addition to being a radical behaviorist, and these are terms that individuals use, I want you to be aware of them. We're not trying to put anyone in a particular category or anything. We're just developing an understanding. But in addition to being a radical behaviorist, Skinner can rightfully be regarded as a determinist. Now, a determinist means that all of our behavior is determined. We're not bringing anything in the world that can be you. Okay. As a determinist, he rejected the notion of free will. We don't have free will. Human behavior does not stem from an act of the will, but like any observable phenomenon, it is lawfully determined and can be studied scientifically. So, in order to study it scientifically, it must be observable and measurable. We watch a 100-yard dash or a 100-meter dash. We observe it, but it may not have pure meaning to it until we actually time the length and the time that it does take to run that. That's an example. So it must be observable, it must be measurable, and all behavior is observable even if it's being observed by the individual who is experiencing that particular behavior. Going on a little bit further there, Skinner wanted to make this a scientific study, and that is why he focused on what is observable and what is measurable. Two of the works of Skinner, one was the Pigeon Project. It's called the Pigeon Project. Now, this was during World War II, and I believe he actually received funding for this. In other words, a pigeon would somehow sit in a cockpit of a rocket and guide that rocket to a particular destination by pecking on certain keys. Now, you would expect the rocket being guided to a destination, reaching that destination, and then exploding. Now, I don't know for sure what happened to the pigeon. I'm not even going to go there. But I could imagine it would have been quite an experience for the pigeon. Remember, the government somewhat went along with this. The United States government, to an extent, went along with this project. So that is the Pigeon Project. A pigeon pecking on keys and guiding a rocket. I feel sorry for that pigeon. Okay. The next was a baby tender. In other words, you could put an infant in there, and this box kind of looked like an aquarium, I guess. And the environment, the atmosphere, the heat, coolness was all automatically controlled. And these are some of the experiments that Skinner worked on, and I admire them. I enjoy studying about them. I enjoy reading about them because why not? Why not try this? All right. Now, Skinner's goal was reinforcement. And if we have a behavior reinforced by some type of reward, we're likely to do it over again. Now, we have positive and negative reinforcement. And an example of a positive and a negative reinforcement, let's say that a person is hungry. Okay. One individual may eat because the food that they're eating they like. So that is a rewarding activity because they are being rewarded for something that they like to do. Now, another individual may eat because they are trying to remove hunger pangs. So they are attempting to remove something that is negative. And when we remove something that is negative, that is called negative reinforcement. And we have different types of reinforcements, which you can study about in the text. We have a fixed ratio, meaning that it will happen every third time, every fourth time, every 10th time. And then we have a variable ratio, which means it will happen every third time, or it will happen maybe not every third time, but it will happen the third time, and then the first time, and then the 10th time. It will vary. So the fixed is it'll either happen third, first, or ninth, as an example. And a variable ratio then means that it will happen at various states. There's no set distance in between when the event takes place. Now, we have fixed time. Fixed time means it happens every 5 seconds, every 5 seconds, every 5 seconds. A variable interval might say it'll happen every 1 second, every 2 seconds, or not every 1 second, but it'll maybe happen 1 second, then 2 seconds later, then 10 seconds later, 15 seconds later, and then back to 1 second later. It will vary. And that's basically what we are looking at here. Now, this, actually the fixed ratio, I don't know if any of you have ever played slot machines or played cards or gambled for money, and that was up to you whether or not you did. But it's the anticipation. We don't win every time. And if it would be nice, oh yeah, I think it'd be great. But we don't win every time. But what really makes this addictive is we don't know when we are going to win. So this is on somewhat of a variable ratio. And of course, it's nice. Maybe sometimes you'll win 4 times in a row. We'll say we're setting a slot machine. And then you don't win again for another 20 times. And then maybe you win 1. So it's the anticipation of this type of reinforcement that makes this very strong. There's much more to it than this. It's in your text, and it will involve studying. Again, this is the second force. This is the last individual in the second force. Hopefully now you can see the difference between what we were talking about as far as the first force and Freud and the Neo-Freudians being controlled by our unconscious, and the second force, which means that we are being controlled the environment. We're going to be talking about the third force. We will be starting out with Maslow. And until we get to the third force, you folks have a good day. And if you have any blank slates laying around, write on them. Bye.